Welcome to Truly Scary Ouija Stories. Like and subscribe to tread the thin line between reality and the surreal. Let's begin our eerie expedition. It was supposed to be our bridge to the past, a way to say the goodbye we never could. Instead, it became our undoing. The darkness within those four walls felt alive, charged with an anticipation that mirrored our own. None of us could have predicted how deeply we were to spiral into the abyss that night, nor the secrets it would unfurl, secrets that should have remained shrouded in the shadows of our past. My name is Mark. At the time, I was a college student, grappling with the recent death of my sister, Amy. The grief was a constant, gnawing presence, an uninvited guest that refused to leave. It was this desperation, this longing for one final connection, that led me to the Ouija board. Sarah and Lucas, my closest friends, agreed to join me in this endeavor, each harboring their own reasons for participating. Sarah, with her rational mind and sturdy presence, seemed skeptical but supportive. Lucas, always the adventurer, viewed it as another mystery to unravel. That evening, we gathered in my dimly lit living room, the only light emanating from a circle of candles surrounding the Ouija board. The atmosphere was tinged with a nervous excitement that belied our shared skepticism. We positioned our fingers lightly on the planchette, and I couldn't shake off the feeling that we were about to cross a threshold from which there was no return. "Is there anyone here with us?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The moments that followed felt endless in their silence, the air heavy with anticipation. Then, almost imperceptibly, the planchette began to move, gliding with a slow, deliberate motion that sent a shiver down my spine. It spelled out a simple yet chilling message: yes. The mood shifted palpably, our earlier levity replaced by a dawning realization of the gravity of our situation. We were no longer alone. An unsettled energy coursed through the room, an unseen presence making its weight felt. Our initial fears were momentarily pushed aside by the spirit's revelations. It knew things it had no right to know, things about us that had been whispered in the dark corners of our minds, never spoken aloud. Lucas shifted uncomfortably as the entity exposed his secret relationship, the revelation straining the bonds of our friendship. The air in my living room, already thick with the storm's electricity, turned stifling as accusations and denials flew, the spirit's unseen hand deftly sowing the seeds of mistrust among us. What started as an attempt to peer through the veil into the afterlife quickly became a mirror reflecting the darkest parts of ourselves. Our skepticism was shattered, replaced by a fear that perhaps some doors once opened can never be truly closed. In the days that followed, our shared experience at the Ouija session lingered like a dark cloud over us, its ramifications seeping into every interaction, straining the fabric of our friendship. In an attempt to find answers, or perhaps some semblance of peace, I reached out to a medium known within the local community for her expertise with the paranormal. Her reputation was a mix of skepticism and awe, but desperation drove me to seek her out. She agreed to meet with us in my cluttered study, the walls lined with books on the supernatural, remnants of my futile attempts to understand the unseen. The medium, a woman with an ageless quality to her, entered the space with a sense of purpose. Her presence was calming, yet the air seemed to thicken around her, charged with an energy that hinted at her connection to the world beyond. As she listened to our recounting of the Ouija board session, her expression grew increasingly grave. "You've invited something into your lives," she said, her voice laced with a solemnity that sent shivers down my spine. "This entity is not your sister. It's something much older, feeding off your emotions, your guilt, your fear." Her words were a cold splash of reality, confirming our worst fears. The malevolent spirit was using us, manipulating our emotions to strengthen its hold in our realm. She warned us of the danger in continuing our attempts to contact Amy, advising us instead to sever whatever connection we had inadvertently established. As she left, the weight of her warning hung heavy in the air, a shadow that threatened to engulf us. Driven by a mixture of fear and determination, Lucas, Sarah, and I decided to delve into the history of Elmsworth, hoping to unearth any information that could give us insight into the spirit's origins. Our search led us to the local library, Its archaic archives a testament to the town's rich and oftentimes dark history. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light that pierced the gloom, the silence of the place, a stark contrast to the turmoil that raged within us. Buried within old newspaper clippings and forgotten journals, we discovered the tragic tale of a mill fire that had claimed numerous lives a century ago, the event shrouded in mystery and rumors of foul play. The location of this tragedy was alarmingly close to my home, a detail that sent a wave of dread coursing through me. It became clear that our malevolent visitor was tethered to this event, its essence intertwined with the tragedy. Armed with this knowledge, we understood what had to be done. We needed to confront the spirit at the site of the mill, to break its connection to our world and send it back to the shadows from which it came. The plan was fraught with danger, a gambit that risked our very souls, but the alternative was a life lived in the shadow of a malevolent presence. Determined yet fearful, we prepared ourselves for what was to come, unaware of the full extent of the horror that awaited us at the abandoned mill. The abandoned mill stood as a macabre monument to tragedy, its skeletal structure a stark silhouette against the twilight sky. As we approached, a sense of dread settled over us, the weight of the spirit's unrest palpable in the chill wind that swept through the ruins. This was to be the battleground, the place where we would confront the malevolent spirit tethered to the land by tragedy and sorrow. The medium's instructions were clear, a ritual to sever the connection, requiring an unwavering focus and unity of purpose amongst us. The air was thick with anticipation and fear as we set up the makeshift altar, the candles casting long, eerie shadows on the decrepit walls. Our resolve was tested as the temperature dropped, an unnatural cold enveloping us, a tangible manifestation of the spirit's anger. Lucas silently began to chant the incantations, his voice steady despite the trembling of his hands. Sarah and I joined in, our voices merging into a singular, desperate plea for release. The wind howled in response, the structure groaning as if in agony, the line between the physical and the supernatural blurring as the ritual reached its climax. Then, silence, a moment suspended in time, where all that existed was the pounding of our hearts and the shallow breaths that escaped our lips. Relief washed over us in a wave, quickly followed by an all-consuming exhaustion that sank into our bones. It seemed at that moment that we had succeeded. The presence that had haunted us was gone, its tether to our world severed by our actions. But victory came at a cost. Lucas, who had been closest to the ritual's epicenter, was found collapsed, his body battered by unseen forces, his spirit diminished by the ordeal. The scars, both physical and mental, would forever serve as a grim reminder of our brush with the supernatural. In the days that followed, Sarah made the heart-wrenching decision to distance herself from the darkness that seemed to cling to our actions. Our friendship, once a bond strengthened by shared experiences, was now a painful reminder of the night we dared to reach beyond the veil. I was left alone, haunted not by spirits, but by the memories of that night. The silence of my home was a stark contrast to the turmoil that raged within, a constant reminder of the price we had paid for our folly. The medium's warning echoed in my mind, a non-ceasing whisper that questioned the very fabric of our reality. In my quest for answers, I had opened a door that should have remained closed, inviting in a darkness that was all too eager to consume us. The ordeal had changed us, leaving marks that were not easily erased, shaping our understanding of the world and our place within it. We had sought to bridge the gap between life and death, to find closure and perhaps a sense of peace. Instead, we found only horror, a chilling revelation of the thin veil that separates our world from the one that lies just beyond our sight. As I sit here, penning this account in the hopes that it may serve as a warning to others, I can't help but wonder what other secrets lie in wait, shrouded in the shadows, yearning for the light. The Ouija board, now locked away in the depths of my attic, serves as a grim reminder of our folly, a testament to the dangers of delving into the unknown. We had sought to speak with the dead, to breach the boundaries that divide worlds. In the end, we learned an invaluable lesson. Some doors, once opened, can never fully be closed. They say curiosity killed the cat, but in our case, it summoned something far worse. As I stand on the threshold of the abandoned house at the end of Willow Street, a chill that has nothing to do with the October air creeps down my spine. The house, with its peeling paint and boarded windows, looks innocuous in the dying light. But we, the four musketeers, Alex, Lena, Mike, and the silent echoes of our missing friend Mara, are about to breach a boundary that some would say is best left untouched. Our laughter, meant to fend off the encroaching darkness, feels hollow, like we're actors in a play we didn't audition for. Lena pushes the creaking door open, her rings clinking together, a sound that in this context resembles chains. The interior smells of decay and long-forgotten memories. A thick layer of dust coats everything, except the circular spot on the floor where we set up our Ouija board, the centerpiece of our ill-advised reunion. "This is perfect," Mike says, a note of forced cheer in his voice that doesn't quite reach his eyes. I can tell he's grappling with the same cocktail of anticipation and dread churning in my stomach. We gather around the old wooden Ouija board, placing it carefully on the floor, smack in the middle of the cleared circular area, as if marking a ritual ground. The flickering light from our flashlights and the lone candle Lena insisted on bringing casts eerie shadows on the walls. The setting is ripped straight from every horror movie playbook, and yet I can't help feeling a pang of excitement. A skeptic by nature, I'm more curious about the psychological effects of the game, the power of suggestion. But the charged atmosphere, the faint, inexplicable drafts of cold air snaking around our ankles, is beginning to erode my disbelief. Our fingers hover over the planchette, a piece of heart-shaped wood that feels unusually cold under my fingertips. "Is there anyone here with us?" Mike asks, his voice barely above a whisper, as if afraid to disturb the silence that's suddenly grown oppressive. To our collective surprise, the planchette stirs. It's hesitant at first, as if unsure, before sliding with purpose to yes. The moment is surreal, a mix of exhilaration and fear, a confrontation with the unknown. For a minute, we're silent, the reality of the situation sinking in. "What's your name?" Lena's voice is steady, but her hand trembles slightly on the planchette. It moves again, more confidently this time, spelling out MARA. The air in the room seems to still, heavier than before. Our reactions vary from shock to disbelief. Mike lets out a nervous laugh. Is this a joke? Who's pushing it? But no one owns up. My heart hammers in my chest. Mara, the friend who vanished without a trace a year ago, leaving a void in our lives, a mystery that consumed us and eventually drove us apart. Now, her name spelled out on this board, in this haunted house, feels like a message from beyond, or a cruel trick played by one of us. The emotional turmoil is overwhelming, a mix of hope, fear, and a burgeoning dread that perhaps we've invited something into this circle that was better left alone. The temptation to ask more, to delve deeper, wars with the instinct to flee, to put the board away and never speak of this again. But we're caught in the current now, pulled toward a truth that none of us are prepared for. The flickering candle casts our shadows on the wall, elongated and distorted, a grotesque performance staged for an audience we can't see but can feel watching us, waiting. The game, it seems, has just begun. The aftermath of Mara's message sends a ripple of unease through our group. Suspicion flickers in Lena's deep brown eyes, searching each of our faces for a sign of deceit. Mike shifts uncomfortably, his usually easygoing demeanor replaced by a tense vigilance. I, too, am conflicted, caught between my skepticism and the chilling possibility that we've actually made contact with our lost friend. Who is doing this? It's not funny. Lena's voice barely conceals her rising panic as she accuses the group, her gaze lingering on me. I shake my head, denying any involvement, my mind racing through logical explanations yet coming up short. The air in the room grows colder, a silent witness to our growing desperation. As the tension mounts, our resolve hardens. Against our better judgment, we continue, urged on by a morbid curiosity and a silent plea for it to be some kind of twisted joke. Our next question breaks the fragile peace we had managed to maintain up until that moment. "What happened to you, Mara?" The planchette moves with unnerving certainty, its motions smoother as if guided by a decisive force. The message is cryptic, spelling out betrayal followed by secrets, accusations that hang heavy in the air. The atmosphere becomes charged with unspoken recriminations and fears. a maelstrom of guilt and suspicion threatening to tear our friendship apart at the seams. Each of us harbors secrets about the night Mara disappeared, details omitted from police reports and hushed whispers among us, now threatening to surface. Lena's usual composure cracks, tears gleaming in her eyes as she withdraws her hand from the planchette, distancing herself from the board and from us. "I can't do this," she whispers, her voice a blend of fear and sorrow. Mike's eyes are wide, reflecting the candlelight eerily as he stares at the board, as if seeing it truly for the first time. Feeling adrift in the tumultuous sea of emotions, I'm startled when the planchette moves again, spelling out "warning," as if the spirit, Mara or not, senses our fracturing and offers a cryptic caution. But what are we being warned against? The spirit's malevolence or the shadows lurking in our own hearts? In the following days, the eerie events escalate. Whispers in the darkness, objects moving inexplicably, and shadows dancing in the periphery of our vision become our new norm. Desperation leads us back to the Ouija board, a flawed beacon of hope in our unraveling reality. We convene once more in the decayed living room, a mirror of our own deterioration, seeking closure or at least a respite from the haunting. Our hands reunite on the planchette, a silent testament to our fractured but enduring bond. "Please, we just want this to stop," Mike pleads into the oppressive silence, his robust figure hunched, diminished under the weight of our shared ordeal. The room feels alive, buzzing with an energy that prickles the skin. The candle flickers violently, casting elongated shadows that seem to mock our plight. "Leave," the board spells out, a simple command laden with implicit threats. The planchette's motion is swift, decisive, heralding an end to the communication. But as we would soon learn, some doors, once opened, refuse to be closed. The sense of being watched intensifies, an uninvited presence latching onto our lives, unseen yet palpably malevolent. Our attempt to sever the connection proves fruitless, leaving us more entangled in the web we wove with every question we asked, every answer we received. We stand at the precipice, unknowingly having invited the darkness lingering on the threshold into our lives. The realization that the haunting we sought to escape was only beginning dawns on us, a cruel mockery of our futile attempts to find peace. The board, an artifact of our naivety, now a harbinger of the enduring nightmare we've awoken. In a desperate bid for freedom from the relentless haunting, we rally once more, this time in Lena's apartment, a stark contrast to the dilapidated house where our nightmare began. The walls, adorned with bright tapestries and the soft glow of fairy lights, provide a false sense of security against the darkness we've invited into our lives. Gathered around the familiar wooden board, a sense of finality envelops us. The planchette, once an object of idle curiosity, now feels like a key to Pandora's box, lying innocently in the center of the Ouija board. "We have to face this. Whatever it is," Lena's voice is steady, a testament to her resolve, though her hands tremble as they join mine on the planchette. Mike nods in agreement, his usual joviality replaced by a grim determination. "What do you want from us?" I ask, my voice betraying the fear I've tried so hard to mask. For a moment, there's stillness, as if the entity on the other end is considering our question. Then, with a precision that chills our bones, the plea spells out, "Truth." The room grows colder, the air charged with an anticipation so tangible it's almost suffocating. It's in this charged silence that the floodgates open, and our secrets, once closely guarded, are laid bare. Accusations and confessions pour forth, painting a harrowing picture of the night Mara disappeared. Hidden resentments, culpabilities, and the silent compacts we'd made with our guilt come to light. We realize, with a dawning horror, that our attempts to contact Mara had instead unearthed the skeletons we'd buried deep within our own consciences. As the revelations subside, a weight seems to lift, leaving behind a hollow emptiness. The planchette moves once more, this time with a slow, deliberate pace, spelling out, "Never free." It's a stark declaration of our fate, underscoring the irrevocable change our folly has wrought upon us. The candle flickers one last time before extinguishing, plunging the room into darkness, a physical manifestation of our ensnared souls. In the days that follow, the haunting persists, but its nature changes. No longer do we face mere poltergeist activities or shadowy figures lurking in our periphery. Instead, we're haunted by our own guilt, manifesting in ways more personal and terrifying than any specter could conjure. Sleep brings no respite, filled with nightmares of Mara, her eyes accusing, and of the dire consequences our actions continue to invite. The realization that the malevolent spirit was never Mara, but a manifestation of our collective guilt and unresolved issues, offers little comfort. We understand now that the real horror is not the spirit we summoned, but the darkness within ourselves, the secrets, the guilt, and the unresolved grief that gave it power over us. In the end, there's no exorcism or ritual to free us from this self-imposed curse. The Ouija board, once a curiosity, is now a symbol of our eternal bondage to the consequences of that one fateful night. We are left to navigate a haunted existence, not by specters or phantoms, but by the specters of our past actions and the phantoms of our guilt, forever lingering in the shadows of our lives. The game, it seems, never truly ends. It was supposed to be just a game, a foolish challenge against the thundering backdrop of a stormy night. Yet, as the planchette moved with a will of its own, spelling out a name long forgotten, we unknowingly opened a door that, once opened, revealed there was no turning back. The ancient house had stood for over a century, its walls whispering secrets of the past, its floors creaking under the weight of untold stories. It was here, in the dimly lit living room bathed in the eerie glow of candlelight, that we gathered around the old Ouija board, a relic found in the attic, covered in dust and forgotten by time. Sarah, her eyes alight with a mix of excitement and fear, insisted on using it. "It's the perfect night for a seance," she had said, her voice barely audible over the howling wind outside. Mark, ever the protector, had his reservations but agreed nonetheless, his curiosity piqued by the storm's relentless fury. And then there was me, Alex, the skeptic, dismissing their beliefs with a chuckle, yet unable to suppress the gnawing unease at the pit of my stomach as we placed our fingers lightly on the planchette. We called out into the darkness, inviting any spirit willing to communicate. Silence was our only reply, the mocking kind, stretching thin our fading bravado. Just as we began to laugh off our fears, the planchette stirred, jolting us into a stunned silence. It glided across the board with purpose, spelling out a name, Eleanor. The room grew colder, a chill seeping into our bones, as if the mentioning of the name had invited an unseen presence among us. Doubt transformed into palpable fear, an indefinable dread that clung to the air, heavy and oppressive. That night, as the storm raged on outside, a different kind of tempest unfurled in my dreams. Eleanor was there, her spectral form emerging from the shadows, her visage twisted in sorrow and rage. She whispered secrets meant for the dead, her voice a chilling caress that left me paralyzed with fear. I awoke in a cold sweat, the haunting echo of her words lingering in the room, a stark reminder of the door we had carelessly opened. The days that followed were marked by an oppressive sense of dread that clung to us like a second skin. Sarah's vibrant laugh had lost its luster, replaced by a nervous, hollow echo. Mark's protective demeanor had turned watchful, his eyes constantly scanning the shadows for signs of the unexplainable. As the line between reality and nightmare blurred, our skepticism crumbled, leaving us to face the terrifying truth: we were not alone. The spirit of Eleanor, or whatever had answered our call that stormy night, had woven itself into the fabric of our lives, an uninvited guest in the realm of the living. Determined to shed light on the haunting that had besieged us, I turned to the local library, diving into the musty archives that smelled of forgotten lore and ancient secrets. It was there, amidst piles of yellowed newspapers and dusty tomes, that I uncovered the tragic tale of Eleanor. She was a woman out of time, a figure shrouded in mystery and whispered rumors of witchcraft. Her disappearance a century ago had left a mark on the town, a dark stain that whispered of unsolved mysteries and unsettled spirits. With each revelation, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, painting a chilling picture that sent shivers down my spine. The knowledge that we had unwittingly entangled ourselves with a spirit seeking vengeance from beyond the grave filled me with an overwhelming sense of dread. It was no longer a question of belief in the supernatural. It was a reality we were living, terrified and desperate for a way out. As if drawn by our growing fear, the supernatural manifestations intensified. Objects disappeared, only to be found in impossible places. Cold spots filled rooms once warm, and our nights were plagued by nightmares so vivid they left us questioning our sanity. The most unsettling occurrence took place in Sarah's room, where the haunting reached a terrifying crescendo. Symbols, like those from our nightmares, appeared on her walls, written with an unseen hand. Their dark, ominous shapes seemed to pulsate with a malevolent energy, a stark reminder of our folly. Fueled by fear and armed with the knowledge of Eleanor's tormented past, we resolved to confront the spirit directly. Gathering once more around the Ouija board, the air heavy with anticipation and dread, we called out to Eleanor, our voices laced with a mix of desperation and hope. The planchette stirred to life, its movement more purposeful than before, as if energized by our fear. The revelations that followed shattered the last fragments of our skepticism. The spirit we had been communicating with revealed itself not to be Eleanor, but something far older, a malevolent entity that had worn her name as a mask. It spoke of a pact, one we had unknowingly sealed with our curiosity and fear, a bond that granted it a terrifying influence over our lives. The room spun, the air thickened, and in that moment of horrifying clarity, we understood the depth of the darkness we had invited into our world. Our desperate plea for release was met with chilling silence, before the planchette moved with frenetic energy, spelling out a message that would haunt us for the rest of our days. Too late. The weight of those settled over us like a shroud, a grim prophecy of the malevolence that had ensnared us, trapped in a game of its own twisted design. In a final, desperate bid to sever the bond that tethered us to the malevolent presence, we sought the guidance of an old woman known for her knowledge of the occult. With trembling hands and whispered prayers, we prepared for a ritual that was our last beacon of hope in the engulfing darkness. The ancient house, once a haven of laughter and friendship, had transformed into a sinister altar where our fates would be decided. As the ritual commenced, the storm outside mirrored the turmoil within us. Candles flickered as if threatened by an unseen breath, their light casting elongated shadows that danced on the walls like specters. The air crackled with energy, a tangible manifestation of the battle between the wills of the living and the desires of the dead. Words of power were spoken, intricate symbols drawn in salt and offerings made, all in the name of breaking the chains that bound us to the entity. Yet, as the ritual reached its climax, an ear-splitting scream tore through the night, emanating from everywhere and nowhere at once. The candles snuffed out, plunging us into darkness so thick it felt like a physical force. A cold wind swept through the room, and the Ouija board, the innocent instigator of our nightmare, began to shake violently. Then, in a burst of malevolent energy, it combusted, flames consuming it until nothing remained but ashes. Silence fell, a deafening absence of sound that felt like the calm after a storm. We waited, breaths held, hearts pounding, for a sign that our ordeal was over. But the silence stretched on, oppressive, mocking, leaving us to wonder if our actions had sealed our fate or merely angered an entity beyond our comprehension. Days turned into weeks, and the supernatural occurrences that had become our unwelcome companions ceased, leaving behind a haunting silence. Yet the peace that should have filled our hearts was absent, replaced by a lingering dread, a constant over-the-shoulder glance into the shadows where terror had once reigned. The final message of the planchette, "Too late," echoed in our minds, a chilling reminder of our folly. As I write this account, the storm outside mirrors the one from that fateful night, a cruel symmetry that brings the memories flooding back. The lines between reality and nightmare have blurred, leaving me to question what is true and what is the product of a mind touched by darkness. Sarah and Mark bear their own scars, the experience binding us in a way no friendship ever could. The door we opened in search of entertainment became a portal to our own personal hells, a doorway we could close but never lock. The ancient entity, though banished, left its mark on our souls, a shadow that follows us, whispering of the darkness that lies just beyond the veil of our understanding. The Ouija board, that simple game played under the cover of night, became a sobering reminder of the unseen forces that surround us, a warning that some doors once opened can never truly be closed. As the storm rages on, I can't help but wonder if our story is truly at its end, or if this silence is merely the eye of a much larger, more terrifying storm yet to break.
Under the flickering candlelight, as laughter died in our throats, we realized too late that not all doors opened can be closed again. It was a simple night meant for thrills, a break from the monotonous hum of college life that had drawn us into the attic of Sarah's Victorian-era home, nestled at the edge of our university town. The air was tinged with the excitement of dare and the chill of October's breath whispering through the cracks in the old structure. We gathered, 4 friends bound by curiosity, around an aged Ouija board that Sarah swore was a genuine artifact from the 19th century. I remember the hesitant looks we exchanged, a silent pact made in the glow of candlelight, each of us wearing a facade of skepticism like armor against the unknown. Sarah, vibrant and daring, was the first to break the silence, her voice a mix of eagerness and challenge as she instructed us on how to proceed. The planchette, cool and smooth beneath our tentative fingers, sat idle in the center of the board, an unspoken question hanging in the air between us. The seance initiation unfolded with an air of innocence. Jokes and playful taunts filled the room as we asked the board mundane questions, eager to break the ice. But as the planchette stirred, a hush fell over the group. It glided with purpose, not the random meandering we had expected. Mara, it spelled out, the name hanging in the air like a prelude to the unknown. Our laughter had faded, replaced by a burgeoning curiosity mixed with an edge of fear. The flickering candles cast long shadows, morphing familiar surroundings into something foreign and foreboding. Sarah's eyes gleamed with triumph and trepidation. The seance had ceased to be a game. In the first signs of haunting, skepticism began its slow retreat in the face of inexplicable manifestations. Alone in my dorm, the giddiness of that night had been replaced by an unsettling solitude. It was there, in the corner of my room, that I first saw it, a shadow where none should be, fluttering at the edge of my vision. Rational thoughts raced to find logical explanations, attributing it to the trickery of light, or the remnants of an overactive imagination fueled by the night's events. Yet, the persistent chill that enveloped me spoke of a reality I was reluctant to acknowledge. The seed of fear, unwittingly nurtured in the attic's dim light, had taken root. The darkness seemed to press closer that night, charged with an unseen energy, as I lay in bed, pondering the transformation of what I had once deemed impossible into an unnerving new truth. The line between belief and skepticism, once clear and unbreachable, blurred as whispers of dread crept into my thoughts. The momentary connection with Mara, originally dismissed as a figment of collective imagination, now bore the weight of reality, a reality that encroached upon the sanctity of my logical, academic world. We had opened a door, invited something across the threshold without understanding the cost. The realization that our actions had consequences beyond our control was a truth I wasn't ready to face. As the night deepened, so did the shadows, leaving me to ponder whether the shiver down my spine was merely the cold, or the breath of an uninvited guest marking the beginning of our descent into a world we had never truly believed existed. In the weeks that followed, the veil of denial grew thin as the haunting manifestations became more pronounced, more personal. We decided it was time to face our fears, to seek some semblance of understanding, or hopefully, a resolution. The reunion was not marked by the joviality that had characterized our gatherings before. Instead, a somber mood enveloped us as we convened in Sarah's living room, the site of our unwitting pact with Mara. The air was heavy, each of us carrying the weight of our encounters, our sleepless nights marked by the unseen presence that now lingered over our lives. Seeking answers became our collective mission. We shared our stories, each account more unsettling than the last, from whispered names in the darkness to the feeling of being watched from just beyond the light. Our skepticism was replaced with a chilling acknowledgement of our reality. We had invited something into our world, something that had no intention of leaving. Sarah, once the most ardent believer among us, now wore an expression of regret, the gravity of our situation etched into her features. The planchette trembled under our combined touch as we called out to Mara once more, a mix of dread and determination driving us to seek closure. The confrontation with Mara was unlike anything we could have anticipated. The planchette moved with a deliberate force, spelling out warnings and revelations that chilled us to the bone. Pact made, no escape, the words formed before us, a declaration of our binding mistake. The flicker of hope that we could somehow undo our actions was extinguished as Mara's message became clear. We were bound to her, to the pact we had unknowingly made, a realization that filled us with a despair deeper than the darkness that surrounded us. In the aftermath, division among friends began to take root. The fear that had once united us now drove wedges of blame and bitterness between us. Accusations flew, each of us grappling with guilt and the frustrating sense of helplessness that had enveloped our lives. Sarah's belief in the paranormal, once a quirky trait we admired, became the focus of our resentment. Alex, whose knowledge of the supernatural had seemed an asset, now seemed a harbinger of our doom. Our friendship, once a source of strength, was fraying, pulled apart by the very entity that had drawn us together that fateful night. The final attempt to sever the bonds that tied us to Mara was born out of desperation rather than hope. We gathered once again, our unity fragile but intact, driven by the primal need to reclaim the semblance of normalcy that had been stolen from us. Our pleas for release, for forgiveness for our ignorance, seemed to echo into the void, met with silence that was more terrifying than any response. The cold realization that Mara would not, or could not, release us from our pact left us in a limbo of fear and resignation. We had sought to explore the unknown, to flirt with the mysteries that lay just beyond our understanding. In our arrogance, we believed ourselves to be in control, never considering that we might not hold the power in this exchange. As we faced the bleak reality of our situation, the bonds of our friendship strained under the weight of a haunting that refused to be banished. It became clear that our journey into the dark had only just begun. Our last gathering was marked with the palpable resignation that had settled over us. The candles flickered in the dim room, casting long shadows that seemed to mock our desperation. We sat in a circle, the Ouija board placed in the center as a testament to our folly. This time, there were no illusions of control, no naivety, only the hope that somehow we could make amends and be freed from the bond that tethered us to Mara. The final attempt was our collective act of contrition. With heavy hearts, we reached out to Mara, not with demands or questions, but with an appeal for release. Our words were met with a chilling silence, the planchette remaining motionless under our trembling fingers. It was then that the final message came, not through the board, but as a whisper in the air that curled around us, a frigid embrace that left no room for doubt. Bound forever, it hissed, a sentence passed down by an unseen judge. In that moment, acceptance of fate became our only recourse. We understood, with a clarity that pierced the haze of our fear, that there was no escaping the consequences of the pact we had made. The night that had started as an adventure, a leap into the unknown for the sake of curiosity, had bound us to Mara, intertwining our fates with hers in ways we could no longer deny nor escape. As we sat there, the magnitude of our situation settling over us like a shroud, each of us was forced to confront the reality of our new existence. We were marked, chosen by a force beyond our understanding, to bear the weight of our curiosity and arrogance. The camaraderie that had once defined our group was replaced with a solemn understanding. We were no longer just friends, but survivors of a choice that had changed us irreparably. The candles burned low as we ended our final seance, not with a dramatic conclusion, but with a quiet acknowledgement of our entwined fate. We parted ways that night, each of us carrying the burden of our pact with Mara, a haunting that would follow us beyond the confines of Sarah's living room. In the time since, the shadows have become constant companions, reminders of the night we reached into the darkness, and something reached back. Our lives have unfolded in the shadow of our pact, each day marked by the whispers of a forgotten promise that binds us to Mara, to each other, and to the haunting reality of our actions. The laughter and skepticism of that October night seem like distant memories now, echoes of a time before we understood the true cost of our curiosity. As I reflect on our journey from disbelief to acceptance, I am reminded of the fragility of the barriers that separate our world from the unknown. Our story is not one of triumph or redemption. It is a tale of caution, a somber warning about the depths of the unknown and the price of venturing beyond the veil. For in seeking to touch the beyond, we allowed it to infiltrate our reality, forever altering the course of our lives. Bound by the whispers of a forgotten pact, we exist in the perpetual twilight of our decision, a haunting reminder that some doors, once opened, can never be closed again.
In the heart of an ancient mansion, shrouded in the myths of bygone eras and nestled at the edge of oblivion, lay the gateway to a realm untold. This was a world that whispered secrets as old as time, where shadows danced at the corner of your eye and the air hummed with the echoes of the past. Yet amid its hallowed halls and decrepit walls, not all spirits came bearing the tranquility of the afterlife. Some, bound by torment and fueled by vengeance, lingered, watching, waiting for the unsuspecting souls daring enough to breach the veil between worlds. It was this ominous lure that drew us, four lifelong friends, into the depths of an adventure that would unravel the fabric of reality as we knew it. The decision to venture into the embrace of the ancient mansion was one born of a mixture of youthful bravado and an insatiable curiosity to pierce the veil of the supernatural. Nathan, ever the daring soul, had proposed the idea, fueled by tales of spirits longing to speak from beyond. Sarah, with her gentle demeanor and a heart open to the mysteries of the universe, was intrigued, her eyes alight with the possibility of undiscovered truths. And then there was me, Alex, straddling the line between skepticism and a covert desire to believe in the tales that haunted our town. Our journey through the mansion was a cautious dance with the unknown, our footsteps echoing through its vast, desolate chambers, stirring the dust of ages past. It was amidst this forgotten grandeur that our eyes fell upon the Ouija board, its surface worn, yet etched with the promise of forbidden knowledge. The air grew thick, charged with an energy that tethered the living to the spirits of yore, wrapping around us like a shroud of anticipation. It was an unspoken agreement, the gravity of the moment silencing any doubts as we gathered around, our hands trembling as they found their place upon the planchette. With bated breath, we invited the spirits to converse, our voices a mere whisper against the weight of silence that enveloped us. The candlelight flickered, casting elongated shadows that danced upon the walls like specters in the night. For what seemed like an eternity, we waited, the line between skepticism and belief blurring with each passing second. It was then, in the stillness that hung between realms, that the planchette stirred to life beneath our collective touch. Its movement was hesitant at first, as if awakening from a slumber that spanned eons. Our hearts raced, a tangible connection forged in that moment, binding us to the entity that dared to cross the threshold. The word hello emerged, spelled out with an eerie precision that sent a shiver down my spine. The atmosphere shifted, a palpable tension creeping into the spaces between us, as if the air itself was laden with whispered warnings. Nathan's eyes sparkled with a mixture of fear and excitement, his earlier bravado giving way to the stark realization of our actions. Sarah's intuition seemed to ripple through the air, her gaze locked on the board with a mixture of awe and apprehension. And there I was, caught in the throes of disbelief and wonder, my skepticism challenged by the undeniable reality that unfolded before us. As we delved deeper, exchanging hesitations for questions, the spirit's responsiveness intensified, weaving a narrative that had remained hidden in the shadows. The revelation of a forgotten pact, tethered to my own lineage, emerged from the depths, the words sending chills down my back. It was a moment of terrifying clarity, the realization that we had awakened something far beyond our understanding, a spirit with intentions obscured by the veil of the unknown. Our encounter had begun as a quest for answers, a challenge to the stories that whispered through the wind. Yet as the entity revealed its connection to me, Alex, an unshakable dread settled within, the implications of its warning echoing in the silence that followed. The session concluded with a foreboding message, residue, leaving us to ponder the true nature of our unwelcome guest. In that moment, what started as a thrill-seeking adventure morphed into a chilling quest for survival. the boundaries of our reality irrevocably altered. The name the spirit spelled out resonated within me, awakening a primal fear, a name that I had heard whispered through hushed tones in my family, laced with shadows and regret. As the realization set in, the playful atmosphere that had initially surrounded our gathering dissipated, leaving in its wake a tension so thick it felt as though it could be sliced with a knife. The air in the abandoned mansion grew colder, the once flickering candle flames now burning steady as if bracing themselves against an unseen chill. Nathan and Sarah looked towards me, their expressions a mixture of confusion and concern, questioning silently how my lineage could possibly be intertwined with the events unfolding before us. Beneath the weight of their gazes, I felt isolated, as if standing on the precipice of an abyss, the spirit's warnings echoing in my mind. It spoke of a pact, one woven into the very fabric of my being, a betrayal that had condemned us to a fate far worse than we could have imagined. The realization that our playful foray into the supernatural had unearthed a history so deeply buried sent shivers down my spine. In the days that followed, the gravity of our encounter at the mansion loomed over us, an omnipresent shadow that we could not escape. Nathan tried to rationalize the experience, clinging to logic as a means to dispel the growing fear that encompassed us. Sarah, ever attuned to the energies around her, grew increasingly disturbed, her intuition signaling that the spirit's presence had latched onto us, or more specifically, onto me. The hauntings began subtly at first, easily dismissed as tricks of the mind or mere coincidences. A flicker of light here, an unexpected chill there, but as the days melded into nights, the manifestations grew bolder, more sinister. Objects moved of their own accord, shadows took on forms when I was alone, and the air was often filled with the faint sound of whispered words, a language that tugged at the edges of my memory, yet remained elusive. Driven by a desperation to understand, and perhaps to find a way to sever the connection that had been forged, I embarked on a search through the remnants of my family's past. The attic of my childhood home became the focal point of my quest, a place where dust-covered memories lay forgotten. It was here, amidst the relics of yesteryears, that I stumbled upon an old diary, bound in leather and worn from time. The diary belonged to an ancestor whose name had been mentioned in hushed tones, shrouded in mystery and shame. As I turned the pages, the words penned in a faded script seemed to leap out, drawing me deeper into a tale of betrayal and a pact made with the spirit we had unwittingly awakened. The revelation was a chilling confirmation of the spirit's claims, casting the shadow of a curse that had lingered through generations, waiting for the opportune moment to make its presence known. The knowledge that my family's history was intertwined with a dark and vengeful spirit, bound by a pact made in moments of desperation, filled me with a dread that was palpable. The diary detailed the terms of the agreement, the price of which had been too steep, condemning not only the one who had sealed the pact, but their lineage as well, to an existence marked by the spirit's relentless pursuit of retribution. Armed with the truth, a heavy burden settled upon my shoulders, the lines between the past and the present blurring as I grappled with the reality that my friends and I had been drawn into a web of consequences set in motion long before our own existence. The revelation that I was the key, the link through which the spirit sought to fulfill its vendetta, left me standing on the edge of an abyss, the depths of which promised an unending nightmare from which there was no awakening. With the weight of history pressing down upon me, I knew what had to be done. The only way to sever the ties that bound the spirit to my lineage was to confront it directly, to renounce the pact made in a moment of desperation by an ancestor long gone. Gathering my friends, who had stood by me through the eerie occurrences and sleepless nights that followed our Ouija board encounter, we returned to the dilapidated mansion that had become the epicenter of our nightmare. The air was thick with anticipation as we set up the board once more, the candlelight casting long shadows that danced across the walls like specters mocking our endeavor. Nathan's steadfast presence provided a semblance of strength, while Sarah's intuitive sensitivity to the energies swirling around us offered a guiding light in the darkness that threatened to consume us. As our fingers once again found their places on the planchette, A cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing the candles and plunging us into darkness. The temperature dropped, our breaths visible in the icy air, as we called out to the spirit, my voice trembling with both fear and resolve. The planchette moved with an urgency we had not experienced before, spelling out a simple, chilling message. Too late. The realization that the spirit was not willing to release its hold on my family, to forgive the sins of the past, was a blow that left us reeling. I pleaded, my words a mixture of apology and desperation, but the planchette remained motionless. The silence a stark reminder of our impotence in the face of such ancient, malevolent forces. In the days that followed, the hauntings intensified, a clear indication of the spirit's anger and its refusal to be appeased. Sleep became a luxury, my nights plagued by nightmares that blurred the lines between reality and the macabre realm of the spirit. It seemed as though the very air I breathed was laced with its malice, each shadow hiding malevolence, each whisper carrying threats. The realization that the spirit's influence had weaved itself intricately into the fabric of my existence was a revelation more chilling than any ghostly apparition. It was not merely the physical manifestations of its presence that haunted me, but the knowledge that it sought to manipulate the course of my life, isolating me from those I held dear, and casting a pall over every moment of joy. As I stood in the ruins of the mansion once more, alone this time, I understood that some curses could not be broken, some pacts could not be undone. The spirit's final message to me, delivered in a nightmare that felt all too real, was a simple yet devastating declaration, bound forever. The echo of those words marked the end of my quest for liberation, leaving me to navigate a world in which the line between the living and the dead had been irrevocably blurred. My friends, though still a part of my life, could never truly understand the depth of the haunting that had become my constant companion. In the end, the legacy of my ancestors' pact was mine to bear, an eternal reminder of the price of curiosity and the depth of familial sins. The spirit, a spectral figure ever present at the periphery of my vision, was both my tormentor and my tether to a past that refused to be forgotten. And so, I learned to live with the ripple effects of a story that began long before I was born, a narrative of betrayal and vengeance that had culminated in a haunting that transcended time. In the heart of an ancient mansion, amid whispers of the past and echoes of the damned, I found my truth in the shadows, a residue of all that had been and all that would ever be.